Hello, thank you for watching today. Today we are going to be talking about media literacy, or in other words, advertising techniques. So before we start properly, obviously the big question is, what is media literacy? So basically, every year advertisers spend billions of pounds, billions of dollars, depending on where we are, every year targeting young people or children in their advertisements. And by trying to learn these techniques that marketers use to get us to try and buy their products, we can become more informed consumers and we can kind of have an armour that we can wear against all these advertising techniques that they're battering against us all the time. It's really important to be an informed consumer, because information that they use, these advertising companies can be manipulated to guide our thinking about these issues. Many of the strategies that they use are actually strong rhetorical techniques. So if you've got any experience with rhetorical techniques or persuasive writing techniques, some of this might be a bit familiar to you. It's a little bit more advanced, it's a little bit more kind of critical thinking and how to break down other people's arguments and find the flaws in other people's arguments and specific techniques that they sometimes use. It will also help if you ever need to create some advertising, because obviously you will then know how to use these techniques as well. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to use these techniques. All of the big companies do. It's just for us to be aware of them so that we know when we're being sold to and to actually think a little bit more critically about it. So our objectives for today are to interpret advertising critically, that's what that top one says, to identify persuasive techniques and to employ intellectual defences against those techniques. So basically by recognising them, we can battle against them with that armour like I spoke about. So here's loads of ways, there's loads more, but the information can be manipulated by the media. So in case you didn't know what the word manipulated means, it basically means getting people to do or think what you want them to. That's manipulating other people. We can also manipulate objects, for example, like Play-Doh. You can manipulate it into a particular shape, but more recently the word manipulate we use with people. So obviously one thing that advertisers want you to do is to buy their products. So they do this by often manipulating information to help sell to us. So we're just going to reflect on these techniques, and we're going to cover all these ones on the screen today. There are more, but hopefully by having these in your arsenal, in your armour, you're at least got some armour against some of the advertising techniques that they use. So let's start with facts and opinions. So facts are things that can be proved to be true. Okay, so there are two different types of facts. First of all, we have observations, so that's something that we can see. So for example, if I can see a traffic light turn red, I know that it's true because I saw it turn red. Okay, and the same thing, another observation, after the storm there was a bright double rainbow. Yeah, it's true because we've seen it, we've observed it. The other type of fact is a definition, so an explanation of what something means. The example we've got here is a student is someone who is studying something. Both observations and definitions, even though they're facts and they can be proved to be true, they can be manipulated. For example, photographs can be altered. We all know that with social media, with Instagram, all filters, and people, especially celebrities, sometimes editing their photos before they upload them so that we think that this perfect body that we've seen is real. We've observed that and we think it's a fact when actually it's not. So these are ways that even facts can be manipulated. Definitions as well is that you could leave out an important part of the definition. So again, we're not maybe getting the full picture. The important thing to take away about facts is that even if something is a fact or it's put forward as a fact, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the whole story or that it's 100% true. The next thing to talk about are opinions, and these are personal beliefs. So not necessarily something that we can prove to be true, it's just what I believe. And opinions can be either supported or unsupported. So a supported opinion is an opinion which has a reason attached to it to explain why I feel the way I do. So for example, if your dad says, I want pancakes for dinner because it's the only food we have in the house and I don't want to go to the shop. That's supported. He's given us some pretty strong reasons there why he wants pancakes for dinner. If, on the other hand, he just said, I want pancakes for dinner without any explanation, that is an unsupported opinion. Okay, so first of all, obviously supported opinions are more strong to look out for than unsupported opinions, we always want reasons to be given as to why someone believes the thing that they believe. If you want to have a go in this Your Turn section, have a look at these 3 statements and see if you can categorise them as facts, either observations or definitions, and opinions, either supported or unsupported. So if you pause now, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. And then, so just to confirm the answers there, the first one, naked mole rats are rodents found in East Africa. That's the definition. It's explaining what something is. The second one, spaghetti's fun to eat because you can twist the noodles on your fork. It's an opinion and it's a supported one because we've got a reason for it. And the last one, the boys all wore swimming suits and fur coats, is an observation. It's just something that you can see. Okay? And the last thing to be aware of with facts and opinions, another way that they can be manipulated, is something that's an opinion and that we should be able to identify it as an opinion, obviously doesn't hold as much weight as a fact. But advertising companies sometimes can take a fact and they can subtly change it into an opinion, and we might not always realise. For example, the kids were playing in the street. That's a fact. It's an observation that we can see. But if I say the mean kids were playing in the street, I've now made an opinion by telling you that I think that those children are mean. And the thing that we just have to be careful about is recognising when we hear that word that this is actually an opinion and it's not a fact. So it can get a little bit tricky there, just being wary and not taking something as fact when it is not. The next thing we have are cause and effect problems. So what I mean by cause and effect is that when something happens, it causes something else. And sometimes this is obvious. For example, when the sun comes up, it dried out the land. The land was wet, the sun came up, dried out the land. Another one. The dog barks loudly at night and it wakes up the neighbours. We can be pretty sure that the first thing in both those situations caused the second thing. Sometimes it can be a little bit less obvious because something that happens can have negative effects and positive effects. They can have more than one effect. For example, if there's a flood, we might think that fishermen might lose business, but engineers who build the dams might get more business. So something bad that happens can have positive effects as well. Similarly, if the price of milk goes up, it can be more expensive for customers, but the farmers could get more money. So it's just a little bit more complicated than always saying this happened and it caused this, because it can often cause lots of different things. So to explain this a bit more, this brings us on to 3 specific problems with cause and effect arguments. The first one we're going to talk about is a false cause. And this happens when an argument or an advertisement makes us think that just because one event happens after another event, it's caused by it. That isn't necessarily the case. Sometimes the second event just happens second and it wasn't actually caused by the first. To give you a kind of silly example, Napoleon, the French emperor, was very short. That's the first event. He became a great emperor. That's the second event. To give you a false causation argument, I would say Napoleon was a great emperor because he was very short. He became a good emperor after he was short, so the first one must have caused the second one. Obviously, you'll hear that and say, well, no, that's not true. Him being short doesn't have anything to do with how good or bad an emperor he was. So that's just kind of an exaggerated example so that you can see how these false causation arguments work. Another one which shows how it might actually work a bit more in practice is the one we've got on the board. So she ate the chicken right before she died, so the chicken must have been poisoned. That's not true. We know that just because she had chicken and then she died, it doesn't mean that her eating the chicken must have caused her to die. There could have been so many other things which caused her to die. So we have to look out for these false causation arguments. The next one we're going to talk about is the single cause fallacy. So it's similar. Fallacy is something that's false, and this is quite similar to the false cause argument. It's when something is made to seem as if it is the sole cause of an event, when in reality there might have been loads of different causes. So, for example, if there's an accident report on a car crash, and it puts the cause of the car crash as one driver speeding, We might be led to believe that that was the only cause of the car crash, but in reality, there might have been loads of different things that are happening. There might have been that the other driver in the crash wasn't paying attention and he could have avoided the accident if he were paying attention. So it's just really important to look out for people saying, oh, this is the cause of this, when actually there's probably there's probably loads of different reasons for this thing happening, not just the one. This brings us on as well to something called correlation versus causation. This is quite a complicated one, but just stick with me if you can. So causation is when the first event actually did cause the second event to happen. For example, the man smoked and it caused him to get lung cancer. Okay, that is causation. Correlation means two things that happen at the same time, but one didn't necessarily cause the other. For example, the people exercised and they lost weight. We could hear that and think, okay, they lost weight because they exercised. But that's not true. It's correlation, not necessarily causation, because it could have been as well that the people just started a diet. They started eating less, and that could have caused their weight loss. And we see this a lot in the media, and we have to be really careful about it. When someone tells us or implies that there's a cause, we have to think, well, is it really, or did it just happen for other reasons at the same time? We've got another example here. So it says, there's a study which says studying more than 2 hours improves performance by 20%. So that might be the headline for the study, and what the study actually showed was the students who studied more than 2 hours the night prior to the exam performed 20% better than those who didn't. This immediately implies to us, it suggests to us, that the students perform better because they studied 2 hours before. But you might be thinking, well, that's not necessarily the case. There could be loads of reasons why. For example, the students who study 2 hours the night before an exam are the students who are more likely to have been studying lots all year. It's not necessarily all about the night before the exam. There could be loads of different reasons. So this is correlation, not causation, and we have to be careful about this. The next thing we have are false dilemmas. So a dilemma is a choice between two bad choices. For example, if we're choosing between chocolate cake and cheesecake for dessert, we might think it's a dilemma, but it's not really, because they're both nice choices. And in a false dilemma, it's when a problem is made to seem like you only have two choices which are problematic. Okay, so for dessert, it might be broccoli or cabbage. Well, I don't like either of those options, but if I had to choose, I would choose cabbage. But it's a false dilemma because that's not all of my options. For dessert, I could have ice cream, chocolate cake, cheesecake as well. So we do see these false dilemma statements where it's saying you have to choose between these two terrible options, when really that's not letting us know that there are A, loads of other options, and B, there's the possibility of compromise as well. So we have to be careful of false dilemmas. We also have something called circular reasoning. This is when you use your argument to try and prove your argument. For example, you could say, she's smart because she studies so much, and she studies so much because she's smart. I'm not really giving you any reasons, I'm not giving you any evidence, I'm not even convincing you at all. I'm just restating my original argument. And we also see this quite a lot as well. It can be a little bit difficult to identify, but try and listen out to it. So another example to try and illustrate this for you is if I were to say to my sister, I should have my own bedroom because I'm older, and older sisters get their own rooms. I haven't really given her a good reason there. I've just restated my first argument that I'm the older sister, so I should have a new room. Yeah? So listen out for those circular reasoning arguments. We also have these things called appeals to pity. So sympathy is when we feel bad for someone else's misfortune or when we share that person's feelings. So basically feeling bad for someone. And advertisers sometimes play on this sympathy in a technique called appeal to pity to try and get you to buy something because you feel sorry. For example, if a company says, if you buy our shirt, we'll give some of the profit to help children without much food in Africa. That might be true, and I'm sure they are going to give profits to children in Africa. But the reasons for me buying the shirt don't really have anything to do with world hunger. The advertiser is just linking these two unrelated things to try and get me to buy something. It's not to say donating to charity and companies that do this, that they're not fantastic causes. We just have to be aware when someone is using these appeal to pity arguments, and to be able to identify them and understand that that can sometimes be an advertising technique. Another technique we have is called the bandwagon effect. This is probably quite a bit more of an obvious one to see. It's when the advertiser basically tries to get you to buy something because everyone else is buying it. So they're trying to convince you that if you don't have this product, you'll be left out forever, that you're not going to be cool or smart like everyone else, and that if you really were cool, you would have already bought this already like everyone else. But there's still time, you can buy it right now and jump on the bandwagon. Okay, so this is another technique, and it's okay to think that we should have all the things that everyone else has because it's cool, but just be aware when someone's using that argument to try and sell to you. The next things we have are called testimonials. These come in lots of different ways. They might come in kind of things like 9 out of 10 people who tried this shampoo said their hair felt healthier and stronger after just 3 uses. That's a testimonial. Another type of testimonial can be from using celebrities in the advertisements on TV or in magazines like these ones. It's kind of saying that, oh, if you use this shampoo, you'll be just as fabulous and beautiful as Selena Gomez or Nicole Scherzinger. So that's why companies use celebrities in their adverts. It's a type of testimonial. Another thing adverts use, which is quite common and a very good rhetorical device as well, is repetition. So just repeating the name of the product in the advertisement, or even having multiple pictures of it as well. If it's on a billboard like this or on the TV, we'll often see, like in all the adverts for McDonald's, you always see McDonald's packaging all throughout the advert, maybe a McDonald's sign in the corner. It's just repeating the brand to you all throughout the advert. The final thing we have is word types, that says. So there are a number of different word types and word associations that advertising companies use. The first type are called purr words, and these words are ones that, like a cat, they kind of make you feel happy just to hear them. So things like home, security, trust, freedom, they're our purr words. The opposite we have are snarl words, and these give you a negative effect just on hearing them. So these can be words like terrorist, liar, greed, sometimes foreign even, and often the word choice is even more important than the argument itself. It just gives us a positive or a negative connotation depending on which word has been chosen. The way a person or a group is labelled often depends on who's doing the labelling. So it depends on what kind of thing you're arguing. Okay. The final type of word are weasel words. These are kind of ambiguous words which are used to weasel out of something. They're words like probably, may, maybe, often, somewhat. And these words enable advertisers to make claims without really promising anything. So this is the example we've got here. So clean, it's virtually spotless. Virtually is a weasel word here because if anyone cleans with this and then they still find dirt there, well, we never said it's actually spotless. We just said it's virtually spotless. Okay, so look out for these weasel words as well. Right, so that's the end of the lesson for today. I hope that now you feel like you're equipped to not just passively listen to these advertisements and let them convince you of everything, but to have some armour against it and to be able to critically think about what you're being advertised to and think, oh, well, actually, I don't need to jump on the bandwagon, or you've just used a circular argument there, so you're not actually convincing me of anything. Advertising isn't all a bad thing. It can let us know about some fantastic products. We just have to be really careful and know when someone is just trying to sell to us and be able to pick all the holes in their argument. So good luck advertising all the adverts you see this week, and thank you very much for listening. Bye.